It is not Tuesday night.
What?
It is Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Shane, we have taken over the Trades in 5 feed for a live roster review. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. As soon as I get this blue light, there we go. Got to get the blue. Gets me a good tint. Yeah, I'm ready to do a roster review. So we had the Scott Fish Bowl live edition in Philadelphia. One of the things raffled off. Well, two of the things raffled off was one, a live roster review, and then another roster review. I forget what. But we decided we're going to go live and do Steven, I'm going to mispronounce his last name, Pinata's roster review for one of his leagues. It's a 2QB league. So we decided we're going to get it done tonight.
Yeah, and it's funny you said Steven Pinata. Well, that's definitely not how you say his last name, but very interesting how you pronounce that. And I just want to shout out to everybody. Shane and I are actually in the same stadium right now. He's on the other side. But if you can see, we're actually in the same stadium on opposite sides. No, we're kidding. Those are just overlay backgrounds. But this is what a roster review looks like. We typically do these, gosh, I don't even know how many times per week. Basically, as many as we can do. We're doing these. So I'm going to throw this up there just for everybody. It's also in the title of the show as well. Roster review inquiries. If you're interested in a review, if you like what you see, there's a bevy of options that you can go through. You'll get the details when you send the email. Just send an email to rosterreview@dynastytradesin5.com with something like roster reviewer inquiry, or I'm interested in a roster review, whatever it might be. We'll get back to you. There is an option to have your league reviewed live on one of these streams. So we're just kind of going live here as a sample. This was one that Steven won on the Scott Fishbowl stream, but
not on the stream, the live raffle.
The live raffle. Whatever. He won it live, giving one away. So we're just doing an example for everybody, but there is an option for you to do one on a live stream like this if you want to put a league that is awesome and you want us to talk about how your awesome team is going to dominate or whatever, we can do it. But there's options. You'll get a response back. So let's get into it, Shane. So Steven's League, as you see, we do the reviews through Dynasty Daddy. The Dynasty Daddy logo up in the upper right-hand corner, dynasty-daddy.com. Plug your league in there. It supports a bunch of different formats. MFL or Sleeper, you just plug in the league ID and it'll pull up power rankings, team rankings, positional rankings, whether you're a contender, a rebuilder, in the middle. Check it out. Recommend the site. It's what we use for our reviews. So check that out. This league specifically, Shane, we got a good one. This isn't just one of those leagues where we're like, oh, man, this is going to be just vanilla, cookie cutter, seen it before.
Real quick, Deb, got to do a little sales promotion. I just need you to know that no matter how much we might actually hate your league or your league format, we still give it 113%. Now, we give 115% to leagues that we like, but I still think 113% is a pretty good number.
We try to give it 100%. It's when we do 10 in a row or 6 in a row or whatever where it gets a little daunting just because it's the same stuff over and over and over.
Yeah.
But this is a good one. This is one that's different. This is not just a cookie cutter league. This is a 12-team, not Superflex, 2QB. 12-team, 2QB. So you have to start to PPR. Does have 1.5 tight end premium. Point per carry, none. It is a start 10. And we ask a bunch of questions. When you inquire with a review, we not only get back to you with, what the options are, what the pricing options are, timing, all that stuff, but we send you a long Google form with a bunch of questions. So here were some of Steven's answers. Then I'll kick it to Shane and let him give his initial impressions. Third year of the league. So it's been going on for 3 years. Last year, he was 6th place. 2021, he won. So at least he has a little bit of money in his pocket, I'm assuming, from winning 2 years ago. He does say he's rebuilding, though, going into this season. Dynasty Daddy agrees. Dynasty Daddy, I'll just show it on the screen here. They classify each team based on overall roster value and then starter value, as you can see. Overall value, starter value, and then positional value. His team specifically, this is his roster. They classify him as rebuilding. So they agree with what he's saying his team is. His league has open trades. He does have 3 24 firsts. You can see the draft picks listed right here on the right-hand side. 2 of them could be top 3 picks, and he also has 4 second-rounders, which, interestingly enough, in a 2QB league, the second-rounders are worth a little bit more because I'm guessing people are going to take QBs out of necessity more so than just, super flex. They're only going to be certain ones. Like you may see 1 or 2 more QBs go in a 2QB league like this year. Someone would have definitely taken Will Levis in the first, and maybe even Hendon Hooker in the first, just because of the scarcity. So keep that in mind. He says it's an active league. They do trade a lot of picks, as you can tell. He has a bunch of picks that he's already accumulated. And then we do ask about your league biases. We need to know as much about your league. Otherwise, you're going to basically just get what we can see from looking at this. He says it depends on the people in the league, the trade deadline. People are willing to trade to get their players if it means winning. We don't know when his trade deadline is, but he did indicate that there is a trade deadline. I'll stop there. We have some other questions that he submitted, but there is the team, Shane. It is a 2 QB league. There's his roster construction. What are your initial thoughts on the team?
A couple things. Hendon Hooker definitely got drafted in the second round in this league. I would hope so. And secondly, what are we doing? Trade deadlines are no-go. That's un-American. And when you have trade deadlines, it just shows that you're a hateful, spiteful person. Get rid of them. They're terrible. Anywho, so we're just going to go through this roster. So they say he's rebuilding. Let's see, the quarterbacks. He's got Clayton Tune. That's fun. Aiden O'Connell, Jarrett Stidham. So he's got the backup du jour plan. I like that. Little Geno, Russ. Running backs are really bad and really thin. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you turn the page over? Are there more running backs hiding?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. We've got 4 running backs.
They've cut them off, which means he has embraced this is a rebuild, and he has gutted all of his running backs. So
okay. All right. Well, then our wide receivers are probably stacked, right? We got Jay Waddle, Zay Flowers, and then we fall down to Gabe Davis, Marvin Mims quickly, Cortland Sutton, Mike Gallup. Josh Palmer, my favorite wide receiver 3 that's never going to happen. Xavier Hutchinson, still not a real person. Trey Palmer, who was one of the creators of South Park, so I love his stuff. I don't know that he's a good wide receiver, though. I like the tight end. Yeah, how can you be mad at Mark Andrews? And then we've got some draft capital. We got 324 picks. So, yeah, we're definitely in a rebuild. We're definitely going to be looking to sell off some of this stuff that we can. I already see some of the folks in the messages echoing it before I say it would be telling me, right? Yeah, that's not echoing it. I see some folks talking about we got to sell some of these assets, and they are 100% right, because this is about as close to a 100% teardown as I've come across during our reviews.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is rebuilding. You can tell by the roster. Now it's how do we get to basically lean all the way into it. He says he has 2 top 3 picks potentially. One of them, I assume, is his own. We're going to need to make sure that is the 101 or 102 or as high as possible. So we're going to go through that. We're going to go through position by position, moves to make. Obviously, if you're in the chat, you can chime in if you have any ideas that you want to throw in there. Shane, if you want to favorite anything that you like, go ahead. Dynasty Daddy also gives us the ability to look at the strengths and weaknesses of other teams and determine who might be good trade fits. So we'll minimize this and kind of go through maybe if we're looking to trade, like what we're going to trade them for, where we're going to target, the type of deals we're looking for, and then what our future plan is with the team. Because obviously rebuilding means, accumulate assets, sell players now, but what's the plan after you've accumulated those? Because sometimes you can get in a rebuild and then you rebuild forever because you get impatient. Like you have to have a mapped out plan. Otherwise you have a bunch of picks, no assets, then what? So what he says, he wants an overall roster review, players I should be looking to get the best value for now. They just added the tight end premium last year, so it's not really that relevant. Let me just flip over to this real quick so everybody can see. So this is, not good live stream in there. I was hoping the warp tool would be pushed up. So
it needs to be refreshed.
It's getting refreshed. Okay. Trying to get it refreshed. I should have had it ready. Okay. So when you put in his league, so this is the South Harmon warp tool, southharmonff.com/warp. You can look at this one. So this is his league. We'll sync the warp here real quick just so everybody can see the roster construction and can see how the warp was last year. So this is the initial thoughts. Now that people are like, what does this mean? It's 4 colors, 4 different positions. Basically, this is a tight end premium league, but that's it. And pretty much every tight end premium league you're going to see looks something like this. AKA, what matters, Shane? Mark Andrews matters?
Yes.
Nobody else, really. Travis Kelce. Okay. The point is, if you don't have a good tight end, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to eliminate the tight ends off of here just because it kind of just convolutes what we're looking at. So there's just a snapshot right there of this is the most basic look at the general value of the 3 positions based on warp. So you got quarterback, you got running back, and you got receivers in blue. So right there, the high-end receivers, right? Lower than the other two. What are your initial thoughts when you see that? What would you think? What would you think there would be a takeaway? Because, like you said, it's a 2 QB league, right?
Yes.
So when you go back to the screen, 2 QB roster construction. So this is essentially what is optimal for this format specifically. And you can notice the receivers are lower than the running backs. So we'll continue on how we're going to build his team. But when I look at this, I immediately think that I want to be in a position where when I'm ready to contend, I need to have running backs.
Yes.
And I probably want to go as slim as possible. It's not quite Scott Fishbowl, but it's kind of very similar. Anybody following along on my Twitter with Scott Fishbowl, like given this is 2 QB and given the running back scoring is what it is, you got to have those positions to win, in my opinion. You got to have receivers in this range somewhere to probably win, but I want to be selective on who they are, and I want to get them at the best bang for my buck price, and I don't want to overexpose myself to receivers. So let's go back to his team.
Hey, real quick. So I do see a couple comments I'm going to get and highlight. And
throw them up there.
It's pretty funny because they're diametrically opposed. So we do have Flowersaurus says, Waddle is a build-around piece. You definitely can't tear down. His wide receivers are trash. His wide receivers are trash. I disagree that Waddle's not a sell piece, though. The Fantasy Plumber, he says Waddle doesn't matter. Sell. And oddly enough, I disagree with Fantasy Plumber. I do think Waddle matters, but I still think he's a sell. And, Koopa Troopa 8 says those wide receivers are low.
Yeah, and if you like the Warp Tool, Koopa Troopa is the one that created it and invented it and maintains it. So, yeah, when you see this, the main takeaway was his best asset, and I'm going to go back to his team. His best asset right now is Jalen Waddle. In this league, Jalen Waddle is not your best asset. Now, on the market, and that's the key thing with looking at Warp and roster construction is there's what's optimal, but then there's the market. And if this market has no clue about this and they're just following this like a typical league, they're going to go, ooh, Jalen Waddle, that's a second-round startup pick. That's a top 8 receiver. He's probably going, you know what? That's the player to tear down based on this format. So let's go back to his team. We're going to start there. Well, just because that's probably his best player. So other than his draft picks, that's probably his most fungible asset that he can move. So given what we just looked at, what is your plan on Waddle? There were some people in the chat that said don't sell Waddle, but honestly, if I can hit on 4 or 5 receivers at some point that I can just get top 12 to 30 production-ish from, top 36, I don't need the most elite ones. The only way I want those guys is I can go to the very top, and that's out of the question for his team right now. So what's your plan with Waddle?
Yeah, I'm trading the hell out of Waddle. I'm tearing off into two pieces. The dude's got to be 2 assets. And generally, I'm like, no, I don't want to trade the 23-year-old wide receiver that's a top 10 dynasty asset at his wide receiver position. But when my roster is this thin and I have nothing else to move, quite frankly, other than ancillary pieces, that'll probably get me. Geno Smith will probably get you first, I think, in a 2 QB. Russell Wilson could if he starts playing well and you haven't already moved him. But considering the fact that we have not much else to move, obviously Mark Andrews, I think I'm going to be trying to split Jalen Waddle into 2 pieces. I just jumped on the DLF Trade Finder just to see what we're looking at. And I think this team has obviously already had its 23 draft, hence the fact that Zay Flowers is on his roster. So you can't get, obviously, any trades this year. But just looking at some trades, including Waddle this year, we're looking at trades like 106, 111. I don't know that I would do that. That definitely feels a little low. Instead, I'd probably try to kick to 106 and something like a 25 first. Understanding that this isn't going to be a 1-year rebuild unless somehow you hit on every one of your 24 firsts and they pop immediately.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up the teams that have the weakest receiver room but are also a contender. So you can sort by wide receiver rank. It's not perfect because it does just basically add up all the points you have at receiver. So literally if you have 10 wide receiver 3s, it will say you have the best wide receiver room because they literally will add up to the most points. But this is a contending team, according to Dynasty Daddy. It has 3 quarterbacks. It's got a bunch of good running backs, pretty stacked running backs for this format, honestly. Jacobs, Chubb, Eckler, Aaron Jones, Antonio Gibson, Jamal Williams. That's awesome for this running back heavy format. Also has Hawkinson. But receivers basically only has 4 guys he could play. So doesn't have a 24 first, but this might be the best trade partner for Jalen Waddle. Do you see an option here that could net you a 2-for-1 for Waddle that you'd be interested in, given where his team is at?
So I actually, what's funny is I actually went to go take a look at someone else that I think I liked a little better, and I completely disregarded your parameters, which were the good ones. Looking at the strong contender and the poor wide receiver room, because I am learning a little bit about Dynasty Daddy. So real quick, I just went to Al Gilstrap's team. He's a contender. Says he's number 1 in wide receivers, right? The reason that interests me is because he probably has a lot of wide receivers he could probably sell off, trade off. And I'm
vibing here. I'm vibing.
Yeah, I'm loving Jordan Addison in a 25 first.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a 24 first. I saw actually someone put in the comments Jordan Addison in a 24 first would be desirable.
Yeah, 20. Look, and just so you know, I'm not automatically shooting for a 25 first. It's just that I know that's more doable a lot of times. And it just so happened that this team doesn't have their 24 first. I mean, what you could do is also ask for a 24 second while you're at it, because that probably would not scuttle the deal.
No, but you know what? Maybe the 24 second is a deal breaker. So what else can we send him that is not a minuscule piece, but something that you probably would struggle to get a 24 second for? Can we send him Jalen Warren?
Yeah, that's how I was looking. Jalen Warren, Dante Foreman.
Yeah, something that you would say is not worth a second, but is enough of a gap piece where they may throw in that second.
Right.
So I like that. Jordan Addison, a 25 first and a 24 second. And you know what? If they want Jalen Warren and Deontay Foreman, I'm fine with it. But try probably Jalen Warren first. But really just give them options. If they wanted Brian Robinson, I'd be fine with it, honestly.
That's where I was going to go to first. I don't really care about Brian Robinson. In some world, maybe you'll be able to get a second for him in season. But if that's what it takes to get the deal done, I'm 100% on board with that.
Yeah, and we're just going to do this because this is going to make it easy. Cut Cameron Latu, cut Trey Palmer, cut Justin Shorter, cut Xavier Hutchinson. Probably at this point, if you can't trade these guys for thirds or fourths, cut Corey Davis, cut Tim Patrick, cut KJ Osborne, cut Josh Palmer, cut Michael Gallup. People are not going to like that, but the receivers are so devalued here that you can spam them. You're not getting a second for any receiver you have. Maybe Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Gabe Davis, you could get a second. Maybe. And you're probably even not even really wanting to trade a guy like Marvin Mims at this point because there's no reason.
Yeah, Marvin Mims, I could wait until, will he pop in season? And we talk about this all the time. What's the value loss I'm losing on Marvin Mims? Let's say Marvin Mims goes out there and he's a trash can. What did I lose by not trading him today?
The only reason I would push back on that is that receivers do not matter in this league.
Mm-hmm.
So even if Marvin Mims hits and he becomes a top 30 receiver, he still isn't worth a first.
You know that.
I know that. But my point is I'm going to be a little more aggressive if I can get the second now versus waiting, because I don't value him if he hits. So it would be only the league that would value him at that point. Unless I can get a first, it's not worth it for me to hold. So if you have to, fine. But I think it just stresses that the team is built entirely wrong for this format. And I know he's rebuilding, but there's a lot of fat to trim, because I think also, what are you going to be able to trade in season? It's either going to be quarterback, it's going to be running back.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. You don't have any.
Right. And that's the point is you've roster constructed in a way where, yeah, sure, these don't matter right now. But teams like this, if you're going to do a full rebuild, I need to have tons of thirds. I want tons of fourths. I want 25 seconds. I want 25 thirds. I want to be able to be flexible when it matters.
So
versus have a bunch of roster cloggers.
Would you try to move Marvin Mims for ancillary running backs, a couple ancillary running backs, and that with the hope of being able to sell them in season?
I think in a
if you can't make the deal to get a second for him.
Anything where you can sell, because we're not going to go through. We don't have time to go through every one of these players on what we would sell. Right. But Graphic 13 even said sell them for fab, because a lot of times a player is too good to drop, right? KJ Osborne, Tim Patrick, Josh Palmer, Michael Gallup are too good to drop. As soon as you want a third, people go, I'm good. I'll wait. I'll maybe wait till the season. I'll give you a third if I like what one of those guys is doing. But other than that, like, how do I get off of players that have a limited window in terms of being able to trade them in the offseason and have limited value upside. The best case scenario, those guys can't do anything where their value is any higher than a third.
Right.
And Graphic 13 put up there, can't get a fourth, you can't get a third, sell them for fab. Sell Corey Davis for 10 fab. What do you have to lose? Because you could maybe use the fab later. You buy the quarterback that 3 teams on the waiver wire want, you buy him because you have the most fab. You can turn around and turn that into a second-round pick.
Yeah, so I see a couple comments I like. Auto accept, trade block those bottom receivers. Yeah. And if you don't know what that is, I think you do at this point. If you've been listening to Scott long enough, dude, you put out what you're willing to accept. Any fourth for KJ Osborne, any third for Tim Patrick. I don't know if those would be the prices. Anything at all for Trey Palmer because I don't know who he is. Something like that.
I saw you start a couple.
Yeah, I like this one, right? In season, yes, you're going to get a ton of waiver wire running backs and hope for the next Jaylen Warren. Yes, you're just going to grind and really that starts now. I mean, it should already started. Once we cut or move, 8 of these receivers, just off the top of my head, we're going to go pick up every running back with a pulse. A couple of them, Scott even highlighted in his last DLF article.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the underrated part about rebuilding is you think I don't want running backs when I'm rebuilding. I want running backs, especially in a league like this where the scoring is so warped in favor of running backs. I want a ton of running backs during the season with the intent of literally just liquidating them for future picks. I don't care if they're thirds. I don't care if they're 25 thirds. I don't care if they're 25 seconds, whatever it is. If I'm doing a full rebuild, that is and it could be receivers in some leagues, right? It could be tight ends in some leagues. It could be quarterbacks in some leagues. You want to hold the assets during the period of time where you don't care what happens for the team in terms of scoring points. You want to hold the assets that the league values. So that's where the manager, he didn't give us that information. We're never going to get that information when we get one of these reviews most of the time. The manager needs to go, okay, I'm rebuilding. I don't care what I have on my team other than foundation pieces, which he's got Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
And a couple other things that we can talk about in a second. But that's it. Everything else he's holding needs to have a purpose, which means if you go, hey, does anybody want to trade for Gabe Davis? And it's like, I'll give you a third. Okay, you can hold him, but the intent shouldn't be let's hold him until next year because he's going to be a good player. You know what I mean? Like you really don't have that on this team. And I did want to put up another comment too that I think makes a ton of sense here. This one. Fantasy Plumber. Shout out to him. Did he make a mistake taking Zay Flowers and Marvin Mims? For the format, kind of. But here's the thing. When you go back to this, hopefully it loads. Yeah. So as you see, this is a running back heavy league, basically all the way across the board, which means I want my receivers to still be in here. I need to have enough receivers, right? I got to have receivers. I just don't want to pay for them what the current market is. So where do I find starting receivers that I hope eventually can be somewhere in here? This call it 8 to 30 range as cheap as possible. So I don't mind taking a shot on Zay Flowers because you kind of hope he becomes one of those guys in a year or two and he can just be a placeholder. He's like hitting a double. It's not a home run, but you got to have some hits. Otherwise you're not going to score any runs. And that's kind of how I look at receivers here. I don't want to pay for him. I don't want to go, oh man, that receiver is really good. Let me go pay 2 firsts for Garrett Wilson. You may in another league here. I mean, that's a terrible trade. So I don't mind it. You got to have some receivers. And if the market doesn't overcorrect, then you're always going to struggle getting them probably on trade because the format doesn't mean you should trade for them. So the easiest place to get them is drafting them. So I think it's a kind of a chicken and egg there decision with drafting them in the rookie draft because you're going against the format, but you got to have them eventually. So.
Yeah, and that's you've got them cheap. This is fairly cheap. Marvin Mims, I'm guessing you got in the mid to back end of the second round. And at that point, who are you taking? I mean, could you have taken Roshan Johnson or Jesus, I can't remember any of the running backs' names already. They're that nondescript.
Tajay Spears, Tank Bigsby,
exactly. Sure,
Kendra Miller, a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, you could have. Hoping, I think Kendra Miller was probably already off the board, and he's the only one.
A-Chain and Charbonnet probably. Yeah.
And those are the 3 that I specifically had hopes of being able to flip for like a first at some point.
Roster construction. Tight ends are absolutely meaningless, so we should not be carrying 4. So let's see. Cam Latu, you can cut him. Irv Smith or Noah Fant, they're just a liquidate candidate. Either one. Don't care which one. Probably would prefer Noah Fant a lot more than Irv Smith, but that's perfect because more people
Noah
probably
Fant,
would be.
I think you probably get more for Noah Fant, so that's probably a move.
I don't think so. I think you can probably get more for Irv Smith.
For Irv Smith? Good Lord.
He's on a good team. Noah Fant's not. At least not as a desirable one for fans. The point is, I don't want tight ends here. I don't care about my backup tight end. So all those tight ends can go, whether it's cut or trade. Cam Latu's, I don't know why you would pick him up in this format. So he's gone. Fant and Irv Smith, I can take a third for him. Either one, I'd do it in this format. Maybe 2/3. Try to get a little greedy. 25 second. I mean, always aim higher, but like you literally want to gut this team of usable players. So that goes with all the receivers as well.
We're trying to get our scoring down, and we're just trying to get additional picks to play around with. Not to hopefully not have to actually make, maybe use them in trades, but even if we have to make them, then flip them later in seasons to upgrade, or when we're good in 2025, use them to buy spot starters, things like that.
So we've gone 25 minutes on this review. We've not talked really quarterbacks. We mentioned who they are, but that is it. So let's focus the rest of the review on the quarterback room here. I think the running backs, receivers, tight ends are kind of self-explanatory. We went over the format, what you should be building in the future. Eventually, we want to build a core of 5 good receivers-ish. They don't have to be studs, just good enough to get me by. And then probably a couple-year window with running backs where I'm just going to accumulate guys, probably either late guys in their career, like the Mixons or Henrys when I'm ready to contend, plus young guys. But I'm probably have to do that through the draft or through trade in the future. So don't even worry about it now. Quarterbacks, though, Shane. 2 QB league here. You said a first for Geno Smith. I want 2 firsts.
Well, you're not.
I would rather hold on to him and get nothing than sell for a single first in a 2 QB league. The scarcity is real. I wanted to get your thoughts on. The problem is he has 3 QBs that are in the below QB 12 range, with no more than a year or 2 probably worth of for sure job security.
I'm taking a first for any 3 of them, and I get your point that this is where you get a little angry and you're like, you're not going to disrespect me. I'm gonna eat this player. I'm not eating Geno Smith. There's no way I'm keeping Geno Smith. You offer me a first for him, he's yours.
Okay, so let's. I understand the idea of you need to liquidate. Ooh. You need to liquidate, right? You got to get rid of 1, maybe 2, but all 3, no. So let's go through a plan. Let's go to these teams at the bottom that their QB room is, as you can see on Dynasty Daddy, bad. So you have to start 2 here. So let's see if old William Shatner Face, creative team name, he's got Sam Howell and Sam Howell.
It's just Sam Howell.
Yes.
Interesting.
Is there a way we can get his 25 first?
I am thinking, wow, why is he's got a lot of wide receivers. Good for him.
And a lot of running backs. Apparently he is going to go spray and pray and stream backups at QB.
Interesting technique. I would 1,000 times try to get his 24 first.
Oh man,
25 first. But the problem is I like David's idea there I like David's idea there, getting like a Sam Howell thrown in, but unfortunately Sam Howell wouldn't be a throw-in for this guy. Sam Howell would be like a critical piece to his roster.
Yeah, he is going to protect Sam Howell at all costs.
Yeah, I mean, geez. But yeah, I mean, David threw another one out there. Geno Smith for a 25 first and Baker. Honestly, I'm taking any first plus any quarterback like that where I can get additional value from them. I take Kyle freaking Trask on the chance that Baker gets benched and Kyle Trask. It doesn't matter to me. I'll take another quarterback, a Sam Howell. If I could get a Desmond Ridder, which I don't know you could, I'd be in absolute heaven.
Well, it's interesting because this team, I'm like, all right, it's 12th in QBs. How bad are the QBs? They're bad. It's one of the worst QB rooms I've seen. Ever. Double down, it's a 2 QB league. So the guy literally doesn't have 2 starters. But the rest of his team's pretty good. Like pretty much everything else, he's in the could contend range. Top 5 tight ends, number 3 receivers.
This guy should be trading one of his wide receivers and one of his picks for a quarterback.
This guy should be going all in to try to get 2 QBs. And if he does, if you just add Derek Carr and Geno Smith to this team, it immediately goes. I mean, it's gross at quarterback. It's still patchworking it together. But damn, if you give him 3 just mid-tier starters, I mean, the amount of inefficiency on his team is just staggering. J.J. Taylor, Darrington Evans, Quintez Cephas, dude, is released and suspended for a year for gambling. So I don't know why he's on a team.
That's why he's got the boo-boo mark next to him.
My point is he's carrying at least 10 shitty players that I would never roster. But
is Drew Lock still in the league?
Drew Lock's back up for the Seahawks. And that's the other thing I looked at with this team. Like, if he's only got Sam Howell, he should have every backup QB living and cut what 8 receivers and 5 running backs and
the tight ends that are no
Rob
longer in the league.
Gronkowski and Mo Alley Cox and so he's got a lot of assets. They're just completely misaligned with the roster format. So would this be a team you would just clean out their picks if you could give them 2 QBs?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So someone in the chat noted it. David Carr or Derek, because David hasn't played in about 15 years. Derek Carr and Geno Smith for what? 2 firsts and 2 seconds and 2 thirds. You think they would do that? If I'm this team, I gotta be honest with you, I'm William Shatner face. I bet you I'd do that because my team is good enough at the other positions where it's going to be just good enough that I'm mid-tier every year. With no real functional way to get a quarterback unless I'm just going to trade A.J. Brown or Chris Olave straight up for a lower end QB1 if I can get it, but it's QB2. So it's 2 QBs. I don't even know if they'd be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I think I probably would just give him the option. Hey, I got Russell Wilson, I got Geno Smith, I got Derek Carr. I need a first and a second for each of them. You pick. You give me a first and a second, I'll give you 1. You give me your other first and a second, I'll give you 2.
You give it 2.
Your problem is solved. Now, you've significantly weakened his team for the future flexibility, and you've also acquired the picks of a team that is probably, especially his 25 picks. I mean, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, DeAndre Hopkins. He's probably got a team that's a little. Plus, the QBs you're trading him are not guaranteed to be.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'd love to give him Russ Wilson and Geno. Because I'll just make up a percentage, a 40% chance that neither of those guys is a starter again after next year.
Well, even Carr's deal is essentially a 1-year deal if you look at it. So the odds that your 3 QBs are still starters in 2+ years, I bet there's a good chance at least one of them is not, just playing the numbers. So if you can kind of sabotage trade him a couple of those, he may be the only team that's really like, all right, I need 2 QBs to probably contend here. Otherwise, he's wasting Derrick Henry. He's wasting Alvin Kamara. He's wasting the prime years of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So he needs to make a move, whether it's sell or whether it's aggressively buy 2 QBs. So there's an option.
And by far, he's the worst. He's the closest thing to a contender with the worst quarterback group in the league.
Here's another one. This team, revenge tour. This is not much better. Dak Prescott and only Mac Jones. So he's got 2 technically, but
if you're him, but we'd have to make the move. It'd have to be what he's giving me a first and Mac Jones for Geno, and I don't know that he would do that.
I think people, and maybe they don't do anything until it's too late, but people underestimate that you need 3 QBs in a 2 QB league.
Right.
There's no, you already know 2 weeks you're taking a 0. And
well, this guy, but with this dude that he could be trading to, this dude's already living on the edge. He decided that Jake Haener, Fresno State, Jake Haener, is that right? Jake Haener, whatever he was.
Yes, Jake Haener.
That's going to be his 3rd QB. So I think this guy might actually just be fine moving Mac Jones a part of the deal.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes you look at teams and you just wonder what the hell they're doing. This guy's already acquired 3 firsts next year, but he also has George Kittle, Calvin Ridley, J.K. Dobbins, Dalvin Cook. Like he's got some players where you're like, this is the time. You know what I mean? So I don't know what he's necessarily doing, but that's another one to go to. See if you can get a pick. He's got 3 firsts. See if you can get a pick from him. Maybe he wants to hoard the 24 first, and he would be willing to trade a 25. Maybe he would give you Mac Jones and a 25 first for whatever QB he wanted. I don't know. Try it.
All right. So another end, looking at our team. I forget what our team is. It's McBeaver face.
We are the one that's bad.
Yeah. So McBeaver face. Let's give this any air. Would you trade Jalen Waddle for a quarterback? And if so, how low of a tier are we talking? Who's Kyler?
Yeah, Kyler's an option. I would be willing to trade for Anthony Richardson if someone would really be willing to move him.
Okay, just looking at the Kyler Murray team, they're frisky. They have Lamar Jackson, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Hendon Hall, and Jaron Hall.
Hendon Hall.
Hendon Hooker and Jaron Hall. Kyler Murray. So I wonder if I could send them Jalen Waddle. And again, a plus be fine. It doesn't need to be Brian Robinson or whatever, or stuff like that, and try to take Kyler off their hands. Who everyone hates Kyler. He sucks, right? Who cares about the fact that he's been a top 8 quarterback in points per game every year of his career?
Yeah, I mean, you can be creative. I think the idea is if we shift back over to Got to refresh the tool again. If you shift back over to what he wants to be doing this year, this is I want to gear my team towards anything that can gain value. I like that he has Clayton Tune, Aiden O'Connell, and Jarrett Stidham already on his roster. 3 quarterbacks that could get spot starts.
Oh,
Continue
definitely.
with that. Pick those guys up. Drop the roster clogger receivers, the ones you can't trade. I want his pick list to be about yay long down here.
Yeah.
Thirds, seconds. I want to dominate the pick space because especially when you have 3 firsts and you're starting to collect future firsts as well, you want to have those extra seconds and thirds to move around the board, right?
Right.
All while being able to kind of figure out this league, how they're going to value QBs in the future. Are they undervaluing the format, meaning running backs are so much more dominant than receivers? Like, you got to figure all that out. And then when you get to the point where you have all the assets, then we can start moving back in towards trying to build a contender. Probably 2025, but you never know. Maybe mid 2024.
And I'll say this as well. Someone wants Mark Andrews off me. He can be gotten too, but it's a quarterback. Same thing. I need a quarterback. So go attack the quarterbacks that people don't like for whatever reasons. Like we said, Kyler Murray, James, yes, there's a lot of Kyler Murray hate. It's unwarranted. It's unjustified. But I'd love to add Kyler Murray to this team and then Caleb Williams next year, and just have the quarterback room completely locked up and still have multiple picks to make strengthen the rest of the roster with.
And if I'm not contending, I would be fine with flipping Mark Andrews for Kyle Pitts. If there's a person that wants to do that just because they don't like the 1-year outlook for Pitts, that goes for every year that you don't like Kyle Pitts' situation. I'd be willing to flip Kelsey or Andrews for Pitts this year if you had a team like this where you literally do not care what happens in 2023 to your players. So keep that in mind as well. This was a good review, Shane. This was an interesting one because it was different. The QB scoring was pretty natural, but it was 2 QBs, and then the running back scoring definitely was nuked or shot up compared to their wide receivers. So a little bit of a different take on some of the player values than what we typically see. Any final words, final thoughts? This was a good one to do live. We didn't even realize it was this complex until we got into it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all simple, right? It's pretty simple. You just need to improve your running backs. When you're ready to compete, you'll build in some running backs in there. Wait, I said quarterbacks, right? You want to improve your quarterbacks. When you're ready to compete, you'll get some running backs. And part of how you're going to do that is getting up as many 2nd and 3rd round picks as you can to buy either spot starts or actually to draft running backs. So hit us up if you have any specific questions on this review. Both Scott and I are on the Twitter, and that's where you find us a lot of the time. Again, there's the address for roster reviews. Generally, just as a heads up, they don't run this long, and we don't take crowd. What's the word I'm looking for? Crowd help. Yeah. Because it's usually just me and Scott.
If we're going to do it live, there is an option to do one
Right.
live. If you're going to do it live, we're definitely going to take input from the comments and stuff, just because why not? Like we're breaking this down, but we're not the only people looking at it. So if you can get a review live and you got 200 people in here looking at the review while it's going on, there's going to be opinions that we may not see. So that's the benefit of doing it live. You actually get some more input from the comments. And obviously, if you want to do a live review, you can set up a time with us when we're going to do it. We're pretty flexible. We'll just literally go live and make sure you're able to watch it, and whoever can tune in can tune in. We did get a super chat. Let's throw that up there. We typically would not take super chats during these streams just because
but we
there's
don't
no
have to
way
turn them off.
Well, we don't have the controls. Shout out to Clay, who controls the everything from the Oz chamber behind the scenes. But we did get a super chat. We typically don't take them here just because we don't know how much time we're going to have, but let's throw that up there. Zach, frat star Zach. I feel like I'm a contender, but I also have great young depth. Should I hold off and play and wait and see approach? Where is this coming from? Do you know any context to the question?
No, there's literally no context to the question. So, I mean, it's pretty broad. I'll say this, Zach. I'm not particularly worried about depth. I'm going to guess that you're playing either in a start 9 or a start 10 team league, where depth is less important than what we typically play in start 11, 12, 13, etc., where depth actually matters. I'm going to say depth's it does not matter as much. If you think you're a legitimate contender, I'm completely on board with using some of that depth to tier up if I have to. roster review we did earlier today. Matter of fact, me and Scott, we were looking at a team that had George Pickens and I forget who the other young wide receiver is. And my first instinct is let's combine those into a real boy. So should you hold off and play and wait and see approach? Stop giving us live. Appreciate the super chats, but stop because we have to leave. Oh, it's Adam. What's up, man? But anyway, let's get back to Zach. I got confused. I'm like a squirrel. Yeah, in general, it's such a broad question. I don't even want to answer it because I'm giving you bad data without having any actual information on your league.
Oh, yeah, I see what he actually gave us his sleeper ID.
Oh, he did?
To pull it up on Dynasty Daddy. He thought we were going to pull it up on Dynasty Daddy live on the stream. Sorry, Zach. I get where you're coming from now by putting that. That's why you put your sleeper ID in there. I'll just say this, pull it up on Dynasty Daddy, but when you're in a situation like this, I love to see teams that don't expect to win, but they have upward momentum on their roster, meaning I go into a season where I'm not looking at my Dynasty Daddy team and I'm saying I'm a top 2, top 3 team. It doesn't say I'm the best team in the league or I'm just completely stacked across the board. But how good does it feel? This is the best spot to be in Dynasty when you have a quasi contender, right? You have a lot of assets. But you also have assets where you're like, man, my QB2 is Bryce Young. I have Breece Hall coming back from ACL. I have a bunch of rookie or second-year receivers, and they may or may not have actually hit a point where I know they're going to help me win. But I can almost look at the year like it's gravy if I contend because I have the assets. I have some future picks. So if he has young depth, but he's not trying to contend yet, wait. I think you wait. You try to contend by kind of saying, like, if anything good happens, I can lean into it, but I'm not completely broken if it doesn't work. Like, that's the best time when you're not expecting it and you kind of accelerate your build faster than what you thought.
But look, if you think you're a contender, just use some of your wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3 players and tier up without using draft picks, combining them, and then use the draft picks for in season if you need to. If you are competing and you can buy in season at that point. I can't find his sleeper ID. I'm apparently very.
It's in the question. Frat Star Zach.
Oh, that's his name.
Yeah. Sleeper
name. See, all right.
I meant sleeper name, not sleeper ID. But he put that in there, thinking we were going to pull it up on the Dynasty Daddy. But maybe next time we'll do a live stream at some point and maybe throw in a couple of these using the Warp tool, southharmonff.com/warp, and then Dynasty Daddy, dynasty-daddy.com. Check out both of those. And that's it. Done with this roster review.
Frat Star, you're only in one league.
Huh?
Sorry. He's only in one league.
You're dissecting him. Take it offline, Shane. Hit him back in the comments.
I'm just looking at it real quick.
Okay. Well, take it offline.
All right,
appreciate everybody tuning in.
I looked at your team really quick, Zach Star, Frat Star. You can definitely compete. It's time to make some moves. You got an extra 20. You got a 25 first. Well, you got a good team. We'll talk.
We'll talk. Yeah. Message DM Shane and just say, Shane, you're my favorite sleeper analyst out there.
Don't do that.
Or the best. I love your guys' work. I love Dynasty Trades in 5, but I just see you followed me 8 minutes ago.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, how's it going? Pretty awesome, but I'm Shane.
I get messages and it says, hey, Shane. And then Shane gets them that says, hey, Scott. So you know they were just copied and pasted and forgot to change the name. Shout out to Adam. Will you review a best ball team for me? Adam, I owe you $5 because you know I would review a best ball team for you. And I'm actually about to go record Mind Warped with Adam here in 10 minutes. So we have to hop off this stream, Shane.
Adam, I'll definitely review a best ball team for you, but I'll probably have to pay you $5 since I suck at best ball.
No, you can review it. Shane will go live by himself, review the best ball team, and then Adam just do the opposite.
Yeah, good plan.
All right. Catch everybody later. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back live Tuesday night for the live stream. I don't think it's out there what we're going to be doing yet, but tune in. That will be, the 18th?
Sounds right.
18th, 8:30, same time, same channel. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Have a good rest of your weekend.